Hey everybody. My name's Martin. It's Earl Smith on the cover, but I go by Martin.
Okay.
There's another author named Martin Smith, and he's quite a bit more famous than I am. So it was one of those things I was like, if I ever get famous, which probably isn't going to happen, but if I ever do, you know, I want everybody to know who I am. So I just went with my middle name for the most part. I grew up in Tennessee. I'm sure you can tell by the accent. I'm not, you know, Philadelphia or New Jersey at all. Grew up in a little town just north of Chattanooga. But I am an alum from the University of Pennsylvania. I graduated from Penn in 2017 with my master's in English. So that's how I have an association with the university and stuff. So this was my 5th book that I'd written with Arcadia Publishing. Philadelphia Big Five's the title. Most of the books that I had written before that were local history books. I did one on Powelton Village in Philadelphia where I lived while I was at Penn. And then I did one on Mystic, Connecticut that I co-wrote with a friend of mine. I did one on Ridgewood, New Jersey, which was the one where we talked about where there were 3 people and it was echoing. So, but that's a postcard history. I did one on Muncie, Pennsylvania, which I've also got copies up here to help kind of keep these copies up. And then I did this one on the Big Five. And this was my first dive into doing basketball. Now my background is I used to do podcasts where we would interview players for the Cincinnati Bengals when I lived in Cincinnati. I lived there for 12 years after I graduated from high school. And had a lot of fun with it. It was a very profitable venture, as most podcasts and blogs aren't. I mean, in the digital age, you can get pretty much any information you want for free online. But I had a lot of fun with it. And then I got to Penn, and I had never been to a college basketball game before in my life. I'd been to several college football games, but never basketball. And so students get in free at the Palestra. So that was my first year there, 2015. Penn was playing Villanova at the Palestra. And I happened to be off campus at the time. Some friends of mine wanted to ride into town and see the game, so we went in to see the game. And I talk about this in the foreword of the book. And so we rode in, and they're talking, oh, it's a Big Five game. And I'm like, what in the world is the Big Five? I'd never heard of this before in my life. And so they started telling me about it, how, you know, it was round robin every year, the 5 teams. Best record or records wins. Winner take all, basically. So started doing that, started researching it a little bit, started going to a lot of Fab Five games, which was a lot of fun. Again, any chance you get to go to the Palestra to see a college basketball game, it's just incredible. I think I talked about this in the book. The Palestra has hosted the most college basketball games in U.S. history. They've hosted the most NCAA tournament games and the most games in the Ivy League. I've all been at the Palestra. And they've hosted, you know, a few national championship games before too, when, you know, Philadelphia was kind of the hotbed for when they would come and play championship basketball. So, doing the work that I had done with photographic history and the research that I'd done and everything else, I decided, okay, this is a topic I want to write about. So I went to Arcadia, and I was like, hey guys, let's do this book. And at first they were just like, you know, because publishers are always looking for ways to make sure a project's going to work before they let you do it. So, went back and forth with them for a while. I was like, this is really going to work. I mean, I've got 5 institutions. Villanova just won the national title. And I started writing this in between the seasons because they won one and then they didn't win and then they won another one. I wrote it in between those 2 seasons. So when this book was coming out was right after when Villanova won their 3rd national title. And so the timing was just perfect. And so I put the book together. I'm going to flip through some of the book stuff here with you here in a minute. And it was a fun process. I ended up dealing with a lot of people from the institutions, and I ended up with 5 players that had played in the Big Five that wrote the forwards for each chapter. Bill Bradshaw did the forward for Villanova. Steve Bilski did the forward for the University of Pennsylvania. Johnny Baum did the forward for Temple. Yes, thank you. Beat me to it. Who have I said so far?
What'd you do for St. Joe's?
St. Joe's, Dom DeJulia did it. He was the AD, or I don't think he ever played it. I think he played baseball at St. Joe's. He didn't play basketball. But he wrote the forward for that chapter. And then who is the gentleman that wrote the forward for Villanova? He actually is a professor of divinity over there now.
For the South?
No, for Villanova. Bradshaw did it for Villanova, or LaSalle. Ed Hastings did it for, he was on the 71-70, or the 70-71 team. The one that went to the national championship game, and then they had all their victories stripped away because one of the players had aged it up.
Howard Porter.
Yep, Howard Porter, yep. And that was the year, too, that Penn was undefeated going into the tournament and made it to the Final Four against Villanova, and Villanova just mopped the floor with them. I think the final was like 90-46. And so after Villanova is stripped of all their wins that season, Penn loses the loss as well. So Penn is like one of 2 teams in college basketball history to go undefeated and not win the national championship. And so Ed's still a little bit bitter about that in the conversations I had with him. He did a wonderful bang-up job on the forward, don't get me wrong. But he was a little, kind of bitter. But it was one of those things, too, where when I started writing this book, I understood that seeing games at the Palestra was great. And for the longest time, all the Big 5 games were played at the Palestra. That doesn't happen anymore. After they started reinstating the Big 5, and Jay Wright saw it as a way to make sure that he got 4 easy non-conference wins every year. He was insistent Villanova was kind of the catalyst of each team getting home games in the series. And then with St. Joe's and LaSalle being in the same conference now, with both of them being in the A-10, they play each other twice a year anyway, so one game's a Big 5 game, one game's not. And so they have a home and home every year. So I went over and, after all the games I'd seen at the Palestra, I went over to Tom Gola and I watched LaSalle and St. Joe's play. It was a great game. That was the night that Dom DeGiulio was retiring, and so LaSalle decided to honor him. They gave him a plaque and everything. I hadn't met Dom up to that point except for through email. I talked to him. And so they gave him his plaque. They did a halftime thing. And I'm pretty sure LaSalle won the game. I've got everything. I actually kept score. I've got it all at home, but I don't remember off the top of my head. The next game I went to, because Villanova just now reopened the pavilion. Last year they were still playing down at Wells Fargo. So I went down to watch them play at Wells Fargo at St. Joe's. I got tickets on press row, and it was the most incredible experience being 10 feet away from the court, while the #1 team in the country is playing. And wouldn't you know that Villanova ended up losing that night? It was the last game they lost that year before winning the national championship. They won out from there. But St. John's beat them. It wasn't even a Big 5 game, but St. John's beat them there on Wells Fargo. And so it was a unique experience seeing those games up close and seeing the passion behind it. Even with the Villanova game not being a Big 5 game, Villanova's student section is just remarkable. I mean, they're just crazy in a good way. And it was intense how, at the time, this was right when the 76ers were starting to get good, but they weren't quite there yet. Villanova fans were blowing 76ers fans out of the arena from what I was being told. And Villanova lost that night. It wasn't even close. I think St. Joe's ended up beating them by 10 or 11. But they were missing 2 or 3 players from that national championship run that were hurt. So they ended up getting everybody back, and then they just went on a run and won the whole thing. So it was important for me to kind of see them in action as, I was writing and developing the process for this book. And it was also important for me, and I'll show you here, that the book not just be about basketball. When I wrote this book, I went, and I'm a professor of English literature at Rowan University down in Glassboro, New Jersey. I went with the perspective that, they're student athletes. And I know in the days of big money basketball and big money collegiate sports, people laugh at that idea, but I still kind of hold true to it. I have, football players in my classes at Rowan, and I have basketball guys in my classes at Harcum, so it's important to me that, that I just keep that student athlete thing kind of ahead. So at the beginning of each chapter, I spend a little bit of time, going over the campuses, like at LaSalle, which, by the way, was the hardest of the 5 to get pictures for. Most of the pictures in LaSalle's archives either have to do with the national championship team in 52, 53, or they have to do with the Lionel Simmons era. And so I can't write just about Tom Gola and Lionel Simmons. As much as I could write a whole book, somebody just did write a whole book about Tom Gola, and as much as you could write a book about Lionel Simmons, I couldn't do that because I was doing a timeline. So LaSalle was a struggle to get pictures for, but we ended up getting them, and we've got College Hall in the library, and the student union, and then we get into the pictures, and some of them are pre-Big 5. LaSalle went 3-1 against the Big 5 teams, for example, in 50-51, but there was no Big 5 at the time. That was the same year that they had several point-shaving scandals, and so a lot of these pictures that I had, I actually purchased myself. They're old AP photos. Let me get out of the way here so you can see. They're all black and white photos here. And it's funny, I kept all these photos. If you flip them over and look on the back, you can actually see the UPI tags on them and the AP tags, talking about whoever took them, what description was there. And so we use black and white.
What arena is that, sir, on the right?
I'm sorry?
What arena were we looking at on the right?
Oh, this is just the student union at LaSalle.
Okay.
Oh, this is Madison Square Garden.
Oh, thank you.
That's MSG, yeah. They were playing a doubleheader there. A lot of the Philadelphia teams would go up there and play doubleheaders. And this, Jackie Moore, who played at the time. And then we got, of course, into the Tom Gola stuff. Tom was a lot of fun to write. Of course, at LaSalle, he's, you can say Tom's name, it'll get you in the door, basically. The arena's named after the guy. So it was a lot of fun doing all the Tom Gola stuff, and I was able to get a couple of, pictures from their archives. They had one that somebody saved that was an autographed picture of the entire team, and this was Tom when he, was a coach, shortly before he passed and everything else. And then you got into some other stuff. Larry Cannon, who was a player. Let me get through the rest of Kobe's dad, which you have to mention when you talk about LaSalle, right?
Jelly bean.
Yep, Jelly Bean, yep. But one thing we tried to do, or I tried to do, and I went back and forth with Arcadia a little bit on this too, is that, the Big Five is mostly basketball, but the other teams do have rivalries in those sports. I mean, you've got 5 teams in a concentrated part of the country. Granted, there's, 2 million people in Philadelphia roughly, but they're all in that kind of tiny pocket, and these are all fairly large schools. So it's fierce in all sports, across, sports. And so when we had the opportunity to include things, we did. This is early women's basketball, soccer. Funny story, I was it this one or is it the other one? Oh, here it is. I was at a signing in Kennett Square, and this gentleman walks up and he flips through the book and he stops on this page. And this is the most obscure little schedule thing that I've got is, soccer. And he looks at it for a minute, he goes, "That's me." And I was like, "No." He's like, "Yeah, I got to buy a copy of this now because I'm in it." And I was like, "Okay, I didn't know who you were. I would have mentioned." He's like, "Well, LaSalle wasn't going to tell you. They didn't keep enough records anyway." So he's like, "That's me." And that's not the first time that's happened. There was a couple of guys for St. Joe's, and we'll get to that when we get there, that, I was at the Collingswood Book Festival over there in Collings when they came out. "Oh, I played for St. Joe's and such as that." I was like, "Oh, well, you got to buy a copy now, don't you?" Bill Morris, you get into all that stuff. So, but one thing we tried to do, and we take a big jump because LaSalle didn't do much in between the Morris era and then going into the Lionel Simmons era. But one thing we tried to do, with most local history books through Arcadia, they want black and white photos. I'm going back and forth here. But if you look, and I use these to help prop up the other books. For example, in their regular series or Images of America series, all the photos are black and white. They print them all in the same color. With this series, they gave me some leeway here to kind of use color photos as well. And I wanted to kind of keep a mix of it because it is historical. So I wanted the black and white, but you'll look in here and see on the same pages where you have black and white and color photos. The problem is that most press photos are black and white. Most color photos that you tend to get are either fairly modern or they're very amateurish. So you don't get a lot of great color photos to include from the older stuff. So black and white was kind of essential. So there was Lionel, and he was interesting. I got to chat with him a little bit. He's an interesting character to talk to. But I got him in black and white and in color, so there was that. And then we moved into a lot of the more modern players with LaSalle, and we do this with a lot of the guys too. The European teams that a lot of these guys played for are always willing to send out press photos if you're working on something. It gets them in the book, basically. And they're always these glorious, glossy, high-resolution, beautiful shots, and it's just like, okay, well, we'll put this in the book then. And so a lot of the players that ended up being Big Five Player of the Year ended up making their way in the book because of that. And then we'll do stuff like schedules and team photos and stuff that the athletic department gave to us. This was the 2007 Penn LaSalle game. That was the double overtime 93-92 game that just was an incredible game. Then we got even a couple of the women's teams in there as well. And we talked about that too. And that was something that was important as well because if you look on Penn's website right now in the University Archives, they archived the women's side on the Big Five all the way back to the early 80s, which was the birth of basketball for women in the college ranks. They're the only ones that's done any kind of really serious, significant stat keeping on that, and I think it's a crying shame, but, somebody needs to kind of pick up the mantle and run with that. But we wanted to make sure that we were including both sides of that tale. So when we could find photos relating to women's basketball, we did, and we included them. So, but then you get into a couple of, the one LaSalle team that made the run to the Sweet 16 when they weren't supposed to. They were actually in one of the play-in games. It was the first year they did the field of 68 instead of 64. LaSalle won their play-in game and then ran all the way to the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed. So, and then we got a couple of ticket stubs, which are always fun to include. And then we get into the Penn chapter, which, Penn's my alma mater. Steve Bilski wrote the chapter from, the forward for that chapter. And I was able to include a lot of the interesting stuff. It's like, I've been in that building and I never went to the dental school because I'm afraid of the dentist, but, I know where it's at. Well, and it's funny, too. The most famous graduate from Penn Dental is Doc Holliday, the famous Old West outlaw. Yeah, he was a dentist of all things, and then he ended up with tuberculosis and moved down to Arizona and decided to become an outlaw. So, I mean, hey, he wasn't an outlaw, he was actually a law enforcement officer helping Wyatt Earp. So, interesting kind of switch there. And then you get into some of the sites and stuff on campus. I actually took this photo myself. This is one of 2 or 3 pictures that I took that was included in the book.
Who is it?
That's the Ben Franklin statue that's in front of Franklin Field.
Oh, that one, I thought you meant the black and white.
No, I didn't take that.
I was gonna say.
Even for it being in the 50s, I'm not that talented. No, I took this one right here in front of Franklin Field. I think I took it with my phone, as a matter of fact. But I've been if you've ever been to Franklin Field to watch football games as well, it's a blast.
Oh, yeah, it is.
We played, while I was there, Villanova in football was the only Big 5 team. I don't think, does St. Joe's have a football team? I don't think. And I know that LaSalle doesn't. LaSalle cut their program.
They stopped.
And one of the things I included was a program from one of their football teams in 01. But Penn, Villanova, and Temple still have their football games. Villanova pretty much owns Temple right now in football, which is the funniest thing because they're a division lower. But I think 5 out of the last 6 games, Villanova's won. So when we got that reference material, we tried to include it too. But yeah, a lot of these guys that we include were, Dick Census was, 3-time Big 5 Player of the Year. This was one of the less memorable teams, but it's such a great team shot. And a lot of times it doesn't even have to be a memorable team. Of course, we include all the national championship games and all those teams. But when we get a shot like this, it's candid and it's this guy's laughing and, if the pose is good, we use it. So, and then we get into a lot of the picture stuff too. This was that 70-71 team that was just absolutely heartbreaking for Penn. It was, and the athletic department gave me this picture. It was 90-47 was the final score on that game. They were insistent that this team be included in the book and that it be proclaimed the only undefeated team in the history of Penn's basketball. And I was like, okay, but they're like, no. I'm like, oh. So I'm working on a book about the Michigan Fab Five right now too.
Oh, jeez.
And of course, they lost all their stuff, when that went down with the Chris Webber and the Ed Martin scandal. And so it's like I'm writing about records that don't exist anymore. Their Final Four banners are at the Bentley Library up there at the university. But those games still happened. Quite frankly, Michigan still profited off of those games. You can't just pretend they didn't happen. So I talked to Steve Fisher about that. He was not. He really didn't want to have anything else to do with the Fab Five. He had just retired from San Diego State, I think it was, or San Jose State, and was just like, okay, I'm done. So. But with Penn, you ended up with a lot of. I didn't know that Chuck Daly had a tie to the university. That shocked me. I'm a Quaker. I just didn't know. Dick Harder was another big name. There's one of the cool kind of retro schedules that we were able to include. We put Chuck Daly in there twice for some reason. It was Chuck Daly. Why wouldn't we, right? Bob Weinhauer. Trying to get the Jerome Allen photo because I want to talk about him for a second. Craig Littlepage, who ended up being the AD down at Virginia. Where is that photo of Jerome Allen? Fred Dunphy, yep. Fred is the only coach to win the Big 5 at more than one program. He won it as a player at LaSalle, and he won it as a coach at Penn and Temple. So it was fascinating to kind of see how he had, Villanova and St. Joe's is all that's left, I guess, but I don't think Friends leave,
How do you feel about the way Temple kind of edged them out? How would you say that?
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, if you look at the training years and you look at the success Fred had when he first got there, it's a big business now. And Temple's a school, in the 5th biggest media market in the country. They have 24,000 students enrolled there now. It's a money-making thing for the university. When you don't win basketball games, you don't make money. So I don't like the way they did it, but I understand why they did it. It was one of those type things. But that's just the way basketball is. I mean, that's just the way, any kind of big business is. They're going to do whatever they have to do. So here's the Palestra. I took this shot myself. They actually had set up the temporary tennis courts for the Penn Open. And I thought that was a good shot, so I got that in there. and I'm sure most of you have been to games at the Palestra. If you haven't, it's such an experience. You've got to do it at least once in your life. There's no place like it. There's no air conditioning in the place. It's just miserable, hot, and stuffy. And you've got college kids all around you screaming. And I went back to Penn when I was 30. So, I was already an adult by that time.
They still do the streamers?
No.
No. No, they don't. But I will say this, the year my book came out was the first time Penn had won the Big Five in 20 years, so I'm going to take credit for that. We can't win anything else this year. We have a losing record in the Ivy League right now, but we won the Big Five. That's all that matters. We've swept the Big Five too. But now these two pictures are interesting right here because of Jerome Allen. Jerome Allen is now an assistant coach with the Celtics, but in his time at Penn, he actually just pled guilty to criminal charges in relation to his time there. He had promised somebody some money, or somebody was going to get recruited and they were going to have some money or something like that. I haven't read all the legal briefs. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination. But that all happened just shortly after the book was published. So technically my book's already out of date. It's funny, especially with history, when you've got something that has a revolving history, how things like that change. Of course, you can't put out a Big Five book every year. There's just not enough demand for it, and you run out of material really fast. But that just shows you how kind of tricky this business is. And then there's a lot of other pictures of guys that played at Penn. I was able to get a lot of great shots from the athletic department at Penn, both of the men's and the women's teams. This was fun because you can see the Palestra right here, and you can see Franklin Field. This is actually taken from the roof of the dorm that I stayed in at Penn. So, I was like, I got to include that, right? Oops. And then you get into the St. Joe's chapter. Dominic DeGiulio, who was a great resource. I cannot say enough about Dom. He was just absolutely amazing with the help that he provided and the people he told me to reach out to. And he wrote the foreword for this chapter. And he did just an absolute fantastic job helping me put this together. He retired last year. He's one of the biggest names in the Big Five. He's been at, St. Joe's, and I think he was at LaSalle before that, for just years. So, and then of course, Jack Ramsey, who's a colorful character, kind of kicks off the chapter on the Big Five. Well, they had better success in the pros than he did at the college level. Bob McNeil going to the black and white. This was a weird thing to write about. Jack Egan and Vince Kipton, who got busted for shaving points while they played at St. Joe's. And the funny thing about it was that year, I think St. Joe's went 25-5, and so back then in the Final Four, the two losing teams played a consolation game. They won the consolation game, so they finished third in the nation. Oh, I'm sorry. She's like, move. But there's that. But yeah, they went 25-5, and they went 4-0 in the Big Five. But the thing was, they were keeping the scores low enough to where Gabbard were beating the spreads, and so they got indicted for that. They got in trouble, and it's always weird to write about. It's always weird to write about those instances, like with the Michigan book that I'm working on. It's hard to write about the whole Ed Martin scandal because it doesn't have anything to do with the basketball, and there's opinions as far as college basketball players and everything else as far as getting paid and whatnot. But this was going on back in the 60s. This is the problem we've had for 60 years now. It's not going away. So it was shaving points then, and then it was Ed Martin, and then we've got Matt Gukas here. Chuck McKenna, who was fun to write about. This photo was actually from Penn's archives, although it ended up in the St. Joe's chapter because I had so much material on Penn and I was struggling a little bit with St. Joe's. I ended up donating most of the material that I had, ended up going to the library at St. Joe's. They had done, Dom had done a lot for me, and I was just like, well, Penn has, it's embarrassing how much Penn has. We've got everything. So it was just, and that's not to say that St. Joe's is struggling. If you drive by the campus now, it's just gorgeous. But their library doesn't have a lot of sports history in its archive, so I was like, well, I'll add that on. And I ended up sending it over to them. Mike Banham, who was fun to write about.
Did you interview Mike Banham?
I did not get to, no. I had an interview that's a mile long, and I got to talk to maybe half the people that I wanted to talk to. Jim Lynam, yep. Yep, Tony Costner. This was a fun photo of Jim Boyle. He was actually wearing a Syracuse hat in the picture. And so I had to confirm that it was Jim, and so they're like, yeah, that's Jim. So And then we started getting to the Jameer Nelson years. You got Phil Martelli before we get to that. I actually ended up buying that autograph photo. Bruiser Flint. And then, let's see here. Surprised we're not all, oh, we're into baseball stuff. This was Dom's insistence right here because he played baseball at St. Joe's.
Yeah.
So Dom's like, yeah, I mentioned the baseball team. I just happened to find that schedule. So John Gallagher, who's at Hartford now, I think. Jameer Nelson. You know, each school seems to have a big name. You know, at least one big name. I mean, with LaSalle, you could argue it's Gola and it's Lionel Simmons. Villanova, you could pick half a dozen players. But, you know, Jameer Nelson was the guy at St. Joe's. National Player of the Year. Took them to #1 ranking. They finished 30-2. Went to the Elite Eight, so yeah. And then you've got Delonte West, who played in the NBA for years, played with LeBron James. Then you get to some of the international players. Yep, Nivens, Garrett Williamson, Langston Galloway, Michelle Baker, who was on the women's side. Oh, did I hit the wrong button? Oh, okay. Let's see here. C.J. Aiken, Robert Roberts, C.J. Aiken again, Carl Jones, DeAndre Bembley. Here, I'm going to kneel down. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm making this hard for the camera. And then Hagen Arena. I always try to include a shot of the arena because, I mean, that's where they play basketball, right? And then we get into Temple. John Baum is a card. If you've ever had a chance to talk to him, he's absolutely hilarious. I talked to him through email. I talked to him on the phone. I got a chance to talk to him at one of the Temple games. He is just an absolute riot. I mean, he's one of the big names over there. I mean, he is, you know, pretty much one of the biggest names in Temple history. You know, played at Chicago for the Bulls. Played under, you know, Harry Latwick. Played, you know, had great things to say about John Chaney. He did an absolutely fantastic job writing forward for this chapter. And then again, you know, with Temple, I had a unique opportunity to talk about school colors, which I do right there. Talk about Codwell and Carnell Hall, getting into some of that stuff. I promise I'm going to stop talking here in a minute. I'll take questions. Questions are my favorite part. Bill Kennedy, got into some of that stuff. You look at these pictures of these guys back in the 60s, and it's funny even how much fashion has changed. If you put that against the picture of Jameer Nelson, you know, the hair's different and everything else, and, you know, just the way that they did photos. I mean, back in the 60s, these kind of, I'm going to look straight at the camera and smile, take my picture things, was the thing. And then now everything's about action shots. They want to see the guys play, or the gals, playing basketball. They want to see you in action. So it was funny how those contrasted. And then, of course, we get the shots of John Baum, and John helped me pick out the photos of himself that he wanted in the book. So that was fun. But, you know, it's John Baum. He can pick what he wants, you know. Ricky Reed, and then we got this winter sports schedule. We had to add some color. We went 4 or 5 black photos in a row, so we threw that in there. Can you see okay? Am I on your way? Okay. And then John Chaney. I mean, you can't say enough about John Chaney. Left behind a wonderful legacy at Temple. If there's a little bit of controversy there, you know, it happens. But the things that he did for the Temple basketball program are just unrivaled. And I think he's in the chapter 2 or 3 times because I think we do it at the beginning of his career and at the end of his career as far as the timeline goes. But he was a lot of fun to write about.
Did you have a chance to interview him?
I got to talk to him courtside for about 5 minutes before a game. Gracious guy. You know, I think John's in his 80s. He toasted back Temple forever. But he was just such a pleasant, he was really excited about the project. He's like, I'm glad somebody's writing this down. He told me, he said, back when I first got to Temple, the Big 5 games were the games.
Sure.
You know, the NCAA tournament, whatever, that's great, but, you know, and it's funny, he said those Big 5 games would get violent. These guys took it seriously. So we got to talk about that. Nate Blackwell was a lot of fun to write about. Mark Macon, Mike Breezewick. That's actually the shortest caption in the book. I don't remember why. I think we cut a sentence from it for some reason. And then we didn't put anything back in its place. So I mean, if you look at the caption of the book, it's only about this big. It's not very long at all. Eddie Jones, we got the 92-93 women's team, which was fun. Dan Leviat, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right. He was an assistant to John Chaney. He is the associate commissioner for basketball for the Southeastern Conference now. So, you know, he went from the Ivy League to the Big East all the way down to the SEC. So, and you see it with a lot of these guys too, like Craig Littlepage all the way back in the Penn chapter. These guys go from conference to conference to conference. They don't sit still. That, you know, wherever the opportunity is to have an impact, that's where they go. Lynn Greer was fun to write about. Rick Brunson, whose son Jalen played at Villanova. That was actually him hugging Jalen when he was in high school, so that was a cool picture. Pepe Sanchez, who was a lot of fun to write about. He's remembered fondly. The same with TJ DeLeo, who is now playing in Germany. A lot of these guys, again, are playing overseas. You know, France, Strasbourg, which I believe, I cannot say for sure, I think it's German. It'll tell us here in a second. It's either Venezuela, Italy, Greece, Poland, France, or Russia. It's one of those places. I'm willing to bet it's Poland. Mark Tyndale, here is Deontay Christmas with the Suns. I even got a little bit of football in there. I managed to get Muhammad Wilkerson in there because he's the big name from Temple. Ryan Brooks. The schedules were always fun to do because you would get perspectives on both the men's and the women's teams on the schedule. And then on top of that, you had all these advertisers, so you would look up and see if they were still in business because you'd want them to know when you wrote the book if they were in there. So I did a lot of that research, and that kind of research is exhausting. It really is. Lavoy Allen, Khalif Wyatt, all those guys from Temple. There is LaCoris. Had a chance to do a book signing back there in January. The funny thing is, the closest bookstore to the arena is the law bookstore, and it's like this tiny little forgotten little bookstore right there on the corner. And so we did the signing there because it was right next to the arena, but it went perfectly fine. So it was that. And then we got to Villanova. We talked about Ed Hastings a little bit. Ed was a lot of fun. There's an article out there that Ed wrote. He was bitter for the longest time about Villanova losing those wins. Because of something that the players did. One player did and everybody lost it. And so he was bitter about that for the longest time. And he's a very spiritual man now. He teaches theology in the graduate program over at Villanova. So it was kind of a weird thing for him to go from that kind of bitterness to redemption and everything else. But he was a lot of fun to talk to. Every Big Five school was knocking down his door when he was recruited. He ended up going to Villanova. This was back before, Villanova was ready to roll. Paul Arizin in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely cannot forget about him. Wally Jones. This is the ABA with the red, white, blue basketball. This was the Nets before they were in the NBA, before they moved to Brooklyn and put on those horrible black uniforms that just had no personality whatsoever.
Is that the dock in the background there?
Yep. Oh, let's go back.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Show your servant.
There he is. Dr. J. Keith Heron playing golf. That was a fun picture that Villanova sent me directly. They're like, oh, this is the only photo we've got of Keith that will be, had high enough resolution to go in the book. I was like, oh, okay. So, Chris Ford, who made the very first three-pointer in NBA history. That was an interesting fact for me for the Celtics.
Wow.
He went to Boston and was a reserve. He didn't ever play much, but he won 2 or 3 rings, but he didn't do much. But he made
He
the
started on the team. He was a starter.
Yeah, and then everybody came in, and then yeah. But he made the very first 3-point shot. He won the Robert V. Giese Trophy for being the best player in the Big Five in '72. Never won the Big Five when he was at Villanova, so it was unfortunate. He played for Detroit and Boston NBA, won the title with the Celtics in '81, and then coached for 18 years and won 2 more titles. Rory Sparrow was fun to write about.
Maybe it's Howard Porter.
That's him.
Did they reconcile with that? Did Ed Hastings reconcile with Porter's deceased?
Yes.
Do you reconcile with him?
Did he do I know? I don't know if he did or not. I mean, it'd be interesting to know. Only Ed knows that. But that would be interesting to find out.
For the next edition.
Yeah, Big Five Volume 2. I'll wait 50 years to bring out the next volume. John Pannone, who actually went down to, where was it? Somewhere in Latin America. Spain. Oh, he went to Spain, actually, and had a great career. This was the 83-84 season before they got to the national championship game. But this is one of my favorite photos in the book because it's the team with Reagan. And that's actually a White House press photo, so I had to talk to the people at the White House to make sure that I could use that. And they, they took forever to get back, and Villanova was like, you know what, we've got permissions, you can use it. And I was like, okay. So got to put Reagan in the book, which was a lot of fun. This is an actual shot from right after they clinched. And then we went on to the 85-86 season. They kind of had a little bit of a drop off. Of course, they played 37 games that year. They finished 2-2 in the Big Five. It's funny how these teams will have wild success and not win the Big Five, or they'll have a horrible season, but they somehow win the Big Five. There's never any consistency there, except for when Villanova decided they wanted to win it the next 30 times, after they reinstated and won. Harold Jensen. This is actually a postcard that they sent out during the ACC Big East Challenge, and the only reason I could use it is because Villanova's right there for the December 7th game. And then we've got, who is this? Oh, Kerry Hills. Give me a minute. And then we've got Alvin Williams, who's now an assistant with the Celtics. Tim Thomas. Malik Allen. And then we had the men and women's schedule. Gary Buchanan and Katie Davis, who is also on the cover. And then we've got Kyle Lowry. That's a really bad photo of Kyle Lowry, but that's the one that his, yeah, he's not even, yeah. Randy Foy, Alan Ray, Dante Cunningham. I don't know why all of a sudden the pictures are more spread out. They're the format in the book is 2 pictures per page. It never varies. But with this is the ebook copy. So with the ebook copy, Laura Kurtz, Malik Wayans, Darren Hillard, who left right before they won the national championship. This is the 2015-2016 team that won it all. They wanted to use the panoramic photo. I guess they thought it was flashy, so I was like, okay, Villanova, thanks. Then we've got Daniel Ofchu. I'm not sure. I never.
Archie Diacono.
No, that's Ochifu.
On the previous picture.
Yeah, right here.
Which one?
Ochifu.
Oh,
That's
Ochifu,
Ochifu, yeah. Ochifu, okay, that's how you pronounce it. Yes, and that's Ryan, yep. And then Chris Jenkins, who's now in the league. And then this is from the 2016-2017 season. Dylan Painter and Josh Hart. And that's how we finish. Of course, we missed a whole years of history from that because when the book was written and came out, but that's how it goes sometimes. So, that's the entirety of the book. I am more than happy to answer any questions anybody has, although if you have specific questions about stats and numbers, I'm probably going to get them wrong. Because your head ends up swimming with all that, so.
Have you been on Sunny Hill?
I'm sorry?
Sunny Hill program on Sunday mornings?
I have not, no.
Okay.
I wish.
Yeah. So you know who he is and everything.
Yes, yes. I have not been on there.
Because I just think you'd make a good guest for it.
Oh, thank you. I like doing stuff like this. We did, not for this book, I've not done any radio or TV for this book. I did several TV interviews when we did the Mystic book, but it's Southeast Connecticut, not much else goes on. I'm kidding, I love it up there. I'm writing another book up there, as a matter of fact. But it's a little bit different dealing with just local history in a small, sleepy New England town than dealing with the big sports market like Philly. So there's 1,000 other people to talk to besides me, unfortunately. So. Yes, sir.
You ever meet Coach Raleigh Massimino?
I didn't get a chance to meet Raleigh, no. I met Jay Wright. I actually spent about an hour talking to Jay. Jay gave me a lot of time and I was really grateful for it. Never met Raleigh. Yes.
Well, Steve Lapis, I don't know what he would say about his tenure at Villanova.
I never got a chance to talk to Steve either. It's with a lot of these guys, and it was funny, and I'll relate back to the Steve Fisher story on the Michigan book. He didn't want to talk about Michigan. A lot of times they don't want to talk about the places they left. And, of course, Steve Fisher left Michigan under a big cloud of, scandal. So I get that to a point. Besides that, Steve's been great. He's went back and proofread a lot of stuff for me. But yeah, once these guys leave a place, Jerome Allen didn't want to talk about his time at Penn. I mean, now we know why. But, at the time I just thought he didn't want to talk about it, so. But unless they've left the program and come back, or they're not associated with any program anymore, they just don't want to talk about it. So, but the older guys, Steve Bilski, Bill Bradshaw, Dom DeJulia, they gave me ample amount of time. They just talked to me into no end. So.
Did you talk to Phil Martelli?
I did talk to Phil a little bit, yeah. That was it. Phil's character. But it was a good. It was good. It was good.
Thank God for Jameer Nelson, I paid him.
Yeah, that made his career, right?
They're still living off of Jameer Nelson. The reason I can say that is I'm a St. Joe graduate.
Oh well, that's more than fair then. It was shocking. Jameer's one of those cases where he was an all-star once when he got to the pros, but it was just like with Lionel. I mean, these guys win National Player of the Year, then they get to the pros, and it's not quite what you expect.
Lionel got hurt.
Yeah, Jameer was there for Jameer was there for 15, 16 years.
You know where his son's going to go to school?
Where's he at?
His son's a senior at Haverford School.
Okay.
He's going to go to St. Joe's.
He committed to St. Joe's? Good, good.
Lionel hurt his knee.
Yeah, Lionel got hurt. That was a big part of Lionel, yeah.
He was, look at his stats.
Oh yeah, his numbers were there.
Productive.
Just got
But the
hurt.
pro just wasn't a stud player like it was, but yeah, I got hurt.
Well, yeah. Well, I see, and it's one of those things too. And and I talked to Lionel before I wrote the book. He was going to write the forward, and then decided he just would rather just kind of be in the background and not, jump in front of everybody else, which is fine by me. I ended up writing the forward myself. A lot of those get, even when he was at LaSalle, he was the big fish in the small pond. Everything ran through Lionel. And he put up, he averaged a double-double. I mean, ridiculous numbers, especially in college basketball. And that put a lot on him. I mean, physically, I can only imagine the wear and tear it put on your body trying to carry a team by yourself. And, they went 30-2. They didn't lose, They stepped up in competition and played a lot of teams even outside the Atlantic 10. And they just beat everybody until, they lost in the Elite Eight. So I can only imagine, you see that a lot of times too with guys that are incredible in college and they get to the pros, there's just nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they get there, they're good for a couple of years, but they just either they're injured or they're worn down and there's nothing left to give. But it's funny how some of these guys that get to the pros and play, like Juwan Howard, played for 17 years in the league. I realized that. I mean, last year he was with LeBron and Dwayne Wade down in Miami when they won the championship, and then retired. I'm like, he played for 17 years. So yeah, it's amazing how some of these guys get there. They're just there forever.
Yeah. Did you talk to many of the writers for papers or no?
Not any of the old writers. I talked to a couple of the guys on Press Row. Daniel, and I can't remember Daniel's last name, but it's about 13 letters long. He writes for the Inquirer now. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
I sat right next to him when I was courtside for the Villanova game, and he was just a fountain of knowledge, and he was willing to give me all the information that he had. So, and of course, I knew the guys that were covering sports over at the DP when I was a student there, so I was able to kind of lean on them, and they were able to give me some information. Carter Coulier, I think that's how you say his name, is I think he's at ESPN now. He's over there doing something for one of the regional kind of portals. So it was kind of fascinating to see these guys that I knew just covering college basketball now kind of jumping up, to the big leagues to cover college basketball. So,
Are you more a fan now than you were when you were before writing the book, or even when you were in college?
oh, absolutely. I was always a football guy, and then with everything that's happened in football the last few years, what we're learning about concussions and everything else, it's kind of tough to and I'll sit there and watch a game. I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. It's still kind of tough not to sit there and think, this is just like watching Roman gladiators 2,000 years ago. These guys are just bashing themselves up against each other, hoping that they can provide for themselves for 10 years, and then what? And again, they're making a choice. I understand that, but it's still rough to watch. And with basketball, you don't get that. People get hurt playing basketball, but you don't get it nearly as much. It's an exciting game to watch, and the NBA does an incredible job of marketing. College basketball does an unbelievable job of marketing. We gear up for March Madness in 2 weeks, and people are already getting ready. So, I've watched a lot more basketball since I wrote the book than I watched before I wrote the book. So there's that.
Do you know why they stopped the tradition of tossing the streamers from the first basket down at the cluster?
I don't know, but I'm probably willing to assume that either A, they didn't want to clean it up, or B, somebody probably slipped and got hurt at some point. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's just like, so if anybody here is familiar with Penn's football traditions, at the end of the third quarter, they throw toast on the track. And it's the weirdest tradition they throw toast on the track.
Toast.
Pieces of toast. They just go on the track.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this and I'm like, and I'm doing it because, I'm a student, I can do it, But I'm like, why are we doing this, The streamers thing kind of makes sense. It's just like when the New Jersey Devils, whenever they score the first goal, or no, Detroit, the Red Wings, Whenever they score their first goal, somebody throws an octopus in there. And I'm just like, why? An octopus, of all things. But, you know.
Toast
From
had
the
anything to
Stanley
do with the
Cup.
Rocky Horror Picture Show? That was one of their.
No, they've been doing that since the 20s and 30s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's from a song.
Yeah, I think it is. Toasted, yeah, something or something like that. But sports traditions are weird in this wonderful way. I mean, they're just the weirdest. It's just like if you ever go to a University of Tennessee football game and listen to them sing Rocky Top. Rocky Top is the most ridiculous song I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, if somebody plays Rocky Top, you can bet I'm singing along, you know. But it's just like that with any sports tradition. So
Sounds like a new book, another book.
it would be fascinating to do a research project on the history of sports traditions. There's a lot you could do with them singing Dixieland Delight down in Alabama, and the senior quarterback at Tennessee conducting the band after they beat Vanderbilt every year, which they haven't done in a while. So there's all these weird traditions. Touchdown Jesus and all that at Notre Dame. There's so much that you could write about there. But yeah, it's time.
In your history, you ever bring up about teams that didn't make it, like on the cusp, that regretted not going farther?
You mean as far as the tournament or as far as the Big Five goes?
Either more than like the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, the Lionel Simmons, Lionel had a lot of regrets. I talked to him about that. They didn't make it past the Elite Eight. That bothered him, and it was just like, well.
4 stud players and 1 center.
Yeah.
Like, no bench.
Couldn't do it, and that's all you had. The 70-71 Penn guys are still really bitter because they beat Villanova twice in the regular season and then lost to them. I mean, it wasn't even a contest. They doubled up on them. I mean, they beat them by 43 points in that 70-71. And then the Villanova guys are still bitter because they had all that stripped away from them. They lost to one of Wooden's teams, I believe, in the national championship. But you're not going to beat one of Wooden's teams. I mean, let's just be fair about it. In the middle of an 88-game winning streak, you're just not going to do it, But you got there. You could put anybody in the ring, they've got a puncher's chance, right?
It was close.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a blowout. They didn't get beat, to death like some of those Wooden teams that went out and just slaughtered people.
St. Joe's, #1 team in the country.
And then, I
And
think.
lose to John Lucas. It's a shot, and they stop at 8. And they get to the Final Four. And Jameer Nelson misses the shot at the top of the key with 2 seconds left in the game.
And that was a tough shot he was taking too. But I mean, you look at some of the greatest players in this series, and besides Gola, who has a national championship? Those Villanova teams were teams. I mean, you had 5 guys and 5 guys on the bench. There wasn't just one stud player. When you had those stud players, even there was great players, but there wasn't the stud. There wasn't the Lionel Simmons or the Jameer Nelson, the national players of the year. But those guys, I mean, excuse me, they could only carry them so far. It's like John Chaney never won a national championship. One of the greatest coaches in college basketball history. I don't think he ever made it past. I think he made it to the Final Four once.
He made the Elite Eight.
Yeah, he may not have made it to the Final
He
Four.
won a championship with Chaney in D2.
Yeah, D2 he did. Yeah, but he never won the big one. So, but he's considered one of the greatest coaches in college basketball.
Because he graduated guys that couldn't even get to college.
Yeah.
Without him. He's a hero.
Oh, he's a disciplinarian, and in a good way.
Yeah.
He took Temple, out of the dark ages and made them a respectable powerhouse basketball program. Just like you said, they graduated people, and that's big. Penn and Villanova are going to graduate their guys. Temple had that reputation though, and Chaney changed it.
Not more.
Well, with the era of the one and done. I mean, even though a lot of the guys from Temple aren't going one and done, I mean, it's still just a different era. That's why it's a joy. And Villanova's done it twice in the last 3 years. I love it when those teams that have those guys that are there for all 4 years and they stay together. It's like Tennessee's doing it right now. Nobody knows any of the players. Grant Williams is a good player. Admiral Schofield's pretty good. But Tennessee may end up making a run in the tournament. And those Rick Barnes coaches, I mean, he was a guy that was at Texas, now he's at Tennessee. It's an entirely different game now. And it's good to see. Gonzaga's the #1 team in the country right now. Can anybody name one player from Gonzaga? Who knows where Gonzaga's at? Spokane, Washington, if anybody's curious.
Is that right?
Yeah.
John Stockton.
Yeah, that's where Stockton went, yeah.
Yeah.
They're out there with, who is it? Wazoo and everybody else that's out in the Spokane area. But,
Okay.
yeah, but, you know, Gonzaga's known for their law school, you know? That John Stockton, but they're the number one team in the country right now, though Tennessee beat them. But yeah,
We could write a book about Pat Summitt.
that would be a fun book to write. That would be a fun book to write. I actually got to meet Coach Summit when I was a teenager. I had a buddy of mine that was being recruited by the University of Tennessee. Victor, hi. He actually ended up playing Tennessee for 4 years. But he was kind enough to take me up to see Tennessee play Notre Dame in 99 or 2000. I'm not sure whether they beat the pants off of Notre Dame. It was like 48-14. It wasn't even close. Notre Dame ends up running a reverse at the end of the game to score the other touchdown, or it would have been like 38-7. But, you know, with all the recruiting stuff, I got to meet, you know, Phil Fulmer, I got to meet Pat Summitt. They roll the carpet out, basically, and you get to meet all these people. Condridge Holloway, who was a legendary quarterback there in the 60s, all kinds of big names. So, yeah, I got a chance to meet Coach Summitt. She's a hero in Tennessee. She's, you know, an idol almost, worshipped almost. That would be a fun book to write about. It really would be.
Did you cover Michael Westbrook at all from LaSalle?
No, I did not. I did not have any material on him, so I didn't get to cover him. It's tough. I mean, I can only usually work with what they give me. And a lot, you know, even the stuff that I went out and found on my own, it was tough to find things that were high enough resolution that looked good enough to go in the book. And there's still a couple of pictures in the book that are kind of choppy that I'm not completely happy with. But material's just hard to get.
Why don't you write about Speedy? I mean, I appreciate
Speedy's in
Speedy
the book.
because the man was girls coach at LaSalle,
Mhm.
boys coach at LaSalle, and he went back and he coached back at the Catholic again. You know, he did everything. He's an absolute basketball lifer.
He's the winningest coach in the Catholic League in Pennsylvania history.
So when I hear about Fran Dunphy, go back and coach the Catholic League. You know, like you've had your time. If you were a basketball lifer, keep coaching.
Either that or
Don't give up.
retire. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a point where you can just kind of call it a day, but would Fran want to leave Philadelphia? That's the question. I don't know, you know, if he would.
Born and raised.
How about Brooks? Michael Brooks?
Michael Brooks. I think I mentioned him in the text. I don't think we had a photo of him, though.
Yeah.
He was mentioned, I don't remember why he was mentioned, but I know he's in there somewhere.
Is he in there somewhere?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
Passed away.
He did pass away, yeah.
Oh, did he pass away? Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
He left and went to Germany.
Yeah. It was Germany, yeah.
Yeah.
Played in Germany.
And he just kind of like went off the face of the earth.
And then that was it.
He could make it with the Clippers. He wasn't.
He got hurt. That's another guy. He got hurt. It
Yeah.
hurt. It hurt.
Couldn't do anything about
And
it.
he just went to Europe and disappeared.
Ugh. Sounds nice right now, doesn't it? Go to Europe and disappear. I kid, but it's just like I live in New Jersey right now. It's just like I'm just going to go to Chester County and disappear once I get tenure. Live out in the woods for 30 years and drive in 4 days a week and teach and then just go home. Play with my dogs. You know, so. Well, thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.